manifestation of God. The river Ganga is worshipped as Shakti. Then somebody will worship a hill as God, as Shiva. Somebody will worship a snake as God. Somebody will worship a tiger as God. But because every form is actually only God's form. And one has to be sensitive to that. You have to give your life to get at this truth. Otherwise it's not coming. Got to give your life. So earth, water, fire, air, space, manas, intellect, ego. We know these three things very well because we are this. At a superficial level, we are this.
What was manas?
Manas is the feeling nature, consciousness, the feeling nature, consciousness. So manas, intellect, ego, these constitute the eightfold lower nature. So this is also God, but God in the manifested form. Then we have been talking, since yesterday morning, we have been talking of God, the unmanifest, and we are saying anchor to that. Now that's very intangible. This is very tangible because this is what the senses can see all the time. So there is a tangible God and then there is an intangible God. There's a manifest God and then there is an unmanifest God. And everything will depend on how you start looking. So you look at a hill and then you remember Ramana Maharshi's word that this Arunachala hill is actually Shiva, is God, because that's his perception. And then you know something. You know that that hill has got a sense of self, I. And that sense of self is the same as the sense of self you have. Not different, not bigger, not smaller. Timeless, both are timeless. Your sense of self is timeless. The hill sense of self is timeless. And you know you can talk to that hill. And the hill will respond. You can talk to, in the Mahabharata, for example, Bhishma's mother is Ganga, in the Mahabharata. And Bhishma talks to his mother, and then Ganga will take an anthropomorphic form and she will manifest as a deity. And then you can talk. So God is present in every material manifestation. And therefore we've got to develop that sensitivity. And that sensitivity will start working and will take birth with the subsidence of Shakti and her restlessness. She has to subside. Which means almost the past is gone. And the future also is taken away. You're not liking it. And then that sensitivity takes birth. And without that sensitivity, life is actually insipid. It's very dense. It's very gross. So now we move forward. So everything is got to be so silent within that when you look at the mountains and when you look at the rivers and you look at the creation, you have to be in a state of mystic wonder. You got to be in a state of mystic wonder. And don't worry. So many creative people have this sense of mystic wonder. And I gave that statement in the retreat in Punta del Este. In Einstein's words, that what is that mystic wonder? So you got to be so sensitive to nature, and you will be sensitive if thought has become quiet, and which is part of intelligence, for thought to be quiet. And because then intelligence has a chance to function. And so Einstein says, he to whom this emotion, actually the most beautiful feeling we can ever experience is the mysteriousness. He to whom this emotion is a stranger who can no longer stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead, his eyes are closed forever. So this is what a scientist is saying. Which means the scientist is very attuned to God in his own way, because his path is, his research is his religion. Please understand. He is reaching God through his research, through theoretical physics. He is reaching God. So there are innumerable paths. But somehow you got to get there. To know that the highest intelligence and the most radiant beauty which our dim faculties can comprehend in their most primitive forms, really exists, this knowledge, this feeling is at the center of the true religious mind. Einstein's words. This knowledge, this feeling is at the center of the true religious mind. So, which means the tremendous sensitivity to the whole of life, to the whole movement of life. And when does that come? Will it come for all? It may not come for all. But it will come with a complete quietening of thought, with the quietening of the futile activity of thought. So now we spoke about the lower nature of the supreme reality. And the lower nature is visible to the senses. So the lower nature constitutes sense objects, right? And earlier we said, please withdraw from sense objects. We said earlier, Indriyartheshu vairagyam. You have got to be detached from sense objects. Now we are giving an opposite teaching that every sense object is God. And my artist friend will be very happy with me. She was unhappy yesterday. Following this, I am reversing the teaching. Yesterday we said, please be detached from all sense objects, initially. And now we come back to the world in a state of mystic wonder after the calming of Shakti and all the restlessness subsiding. Now we see every sense object as but a manifestation of God in mystic wonder. And now, savoring the sense objects, they've all become very delicious. You become extremely sensitive to it. The senses are awakened. Before, the senses were working only with 20% efficiency. They were all big clouded. It's like a lot of wax in the ears, a lot of mud in the eyes. They are working only with 20% efficiency. Now, with the complete calming of consciousness, now the senses become awakened. So everything is so bright and so clear. Because the veil of Maya has come down. So now we are saying even the sense objects are God only. So the teaching is reversed in this part. So that was kind of class 1, grade 1 teaching. This is grade 2 teaching. Here the teaching is different. So, apareyam itastanyam prakritim vidhi meparam jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagate. This is the inferior nature, different from it. Know you, O mighty armed Arjuna, my higher nature Prakriti, forming the life essence of all the jivas, is also the support of the whole universe. So, behind the manas and behind the intellect and behind the ego is the life essence, Shiva. And that is the support of the whole world. And because of Maya, we are all thinking that the world is completely objective. The world is totally objective. It exists independent of us. But this is not the truth. Because you need to have an observer who is observing the world through the senses in order to validate the existence of the world and say, yes, I observed it, the mountains exist, the waters exist. You need an observer. And the question is there a world when there is no observer? And the shocking news for you is that there is no world. This world belongs to you. There is no world. When you are sleeping, there is no world for you. You go back into the unmanifest. When the body is sleeping, you go back into the unmanifest. And when the body withers away at death, you go into the unmanifest, maybe into subtler realms. And this whole world, which you think is actually objective, it's very much dependent on you. You have to be there to support its existence, kind of. Because it's like the two eyes of the human being, they are actually like the projector or the projector in a planetarium. In a planetarium, there is a projector, and then on the dome of the planetarium is projected the panoramic vista of the cosmos. Right? So now everything is projected from the projector, right? So it's in the projector, the whole film, the whole program. So likewise, this whole cosmic manifestation is in you. It's just beaming out through the eyes. My God. Yeah, it's true. Think about it. It's just the whole thing is streaming out through the eyes. And when the eyes are closed, it's not there. And then you will say, okay, or you're spinning some tall tales. Okay, I'm not there. I'll bring another guy. And another guy can see the universe. Yes, yes. But a human observer has to be there. Only then the cosmos exists. This is subjective reality. It's not an objective reality as we may form a first impression of, that it's an objective reality. When you dig deeper, you find that it's a subjective reality. So there is a lower nature and then there is a higher nature. And the higher nature is the life essence of all the jivas. It is the life of your life. Life of your life. There is a small life in thought and feeling and in ego and the feeling nature. Then there is, behind that, there is another life. So the poet Rabindranath Tagore, he sings, life of my life, I shall ever try to keep my body pure, knowing that thy living touches upon all my limbs. So the life of your life, that's below, it's hidden, it's unmanifest. And because it's subtle, it's unmanifest, you've got to be subtle to get at that subtle truth. If you're not subtle, then you can't get there. Now this is a procession in India where a deity is taken in a procession. It is a ritual act done in India. And we have to understand why it is done. It is done in order to put the reality of God on the center stage of life, to give God the primacy in life, that He takes precedence over every other concern in life. And then one of the names in a Vedic chant is God is described as 1,000-headed. Saharsa Sirsha Purushaha. God is worshipped. So every individual here in the crowd is a manifestation of the divine, endless, infinite manifestation. So the divine has kind of multiplied itself. Then limitlessly it's just multiplied itself. And so that source, whose lower nature is perceptible to the senses, but whose higher nature is subtle and hidden from the senses, that God is remembered by the manas, by the intellect, and by the ego. And then you offer salutations to that. You remember the name, you invoke the name, and you say, be kind to me, thank you, thank you. So now if you do this with devotion and with sincerity, and with a sankalpa, with a resolution, then you think the signal is going to go to Parabrahma or it's not going. It's obviously going, because you're already connected. So now for the Hindus, this is a way of life. God occupies the center stage for everything. For example, the Hindus say, Annam Parabrahma Swarupam. They say food is a manifestation of Parabrahma. Food, bread, all that you eat. Annam Parabrahma Swarupam. Udakam Narayanam. Water is God. Food is God. So the Hindus see everything as the divine. They don't see anything other than the divine. So in some of the Hindu temples, in Khajuraho for example, you will see images and vigrahas of sexual congress on the temple Gopuram. So it's called erotic sculpture. Because for the Hindus, the bifurcation of the divine into a worldly aspect and into a spiritual aspect is not there. Because everywhere is only the divine is present. The divine pervades everything. Which is the truth, anyhow. but a lower manifestation and higher manifestation. And so one has to ultimately in the spiritual life get to that position, get to that understanding, whereby we begin to see everything as divine and nothing as undivine. Nothing as undivine. Only the divine is present. But when it is manifesting, it has three faces, good, bad and ugly. From the human point of view, we describe it as good, some manifestations are bad, some manifestations are ugly. But the divine never said, this is my good manifestation, this is my bad manifestation, this is my ugly. The divine never passed a judgment, it's man who is passing a judgment. So now, the higher nature. This is the already introduced you to the sutra, is the thread. And that is the life essence, which is passing through every bead, every creature. It is there. And it is in the mountain, it is in the river, it is in the bird, it is in the man walking on the road. And one has to wonder about it, keep on wondering till it becomes your truth. Keep on wondering till it becomes your truth. Until all doubts are vanished. And then you are in a state of mystic wonder. No more questions. And you've got to work this out. Any questions at this stage? We're moving forward, doing a little bit of meditation and then trying to understand. Many people are doing a different kind of sadhana with their cameras and cell phones. They're photographing the lower nature of the divine. I'm asking you to only recognize the lower nature as the divine, yes, but to concentrate on the higher nature. So now it's become clear that the divine has a lower manifestation, that it's got a higher manifestation. Is that clear? Yeah. The transcendental is all sacred. So shall we move forward if there are no questions? Now to perceive that in all its lustrous form, when the interference of thought is not at all there, then you get a glimpse of the totality of the divine, all pervasive, omniscient, omnipresent. And we have three states of consciousness: the sleeping state and the waking state and the dreaming state. And one great master from India, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, he made the beautiful statement that even your waking state is only a dreaming state. Don't be impressed by it. Because you're all the time daydreaming only. Because intelligence is not awakened. And then there are important events which happen in our consciousness. And we remember these important events. They may happen in a dream. They may happen in a spiritual retreat as a mystical experience. Or they may happen in our journey in Artha and Kama, a painful experience, a pleasurable experience. We just remember the incidents, the blotches. But then we are completely forgetting what underlies the whole thing. Underlying the whole thing is Shiva, ever so silent, ever so unobtrusive, ever so recessive, that we miss out the truth that we are that. And we identify instead with this experience, with this experience, with this experience, with this experience, and we miss out on the bedrock on which every experience is happening. very similar to. So just simple analogies and simple things for you to actually do the deeper thinking. So manana, and if the fan is rotating, for example, then you come and stand under the fan, and the fan is rotating. Then you can't see the ceiling behind the rotating blades. The ceiling is like the Atma, is the imperceptible, inner imperceptible self. And the blades, moving blades, are the movement of Shakti. So that Shakti creates a veiling influence. And when she becomes completely quiet, then can we know that we are that bedrock awareness? Has anybody felt that? In meditations, in oneness retreats? Wonderful. You are the saint for the retreat. Yeah. But I know that you won't accept it because that's another temptation for the ego. Yeah, great. Anybody else? Great. 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 I'm going to garland you 3 people. Great. I'm so pleased. So one has to know that. And not just enough to know that, not to have a fleeting glimpse, but to abide in it, but to settle in it, and to be that. Okay, now we want to know more of the Atma Tattva, the nature of the Atma, the imperceptible inner self. And before we go into it, 3 or 4 sutras from the Bhagavad Gita, food for thought, for you to actually think and start, because you must have a framework, a theological framework, or a Hindu framework, which is called darshana. It has to be either yoga or sankhya or Uttaramimamsha, Purvamimamsha. These are all Hindu frameworks. And there is no unique framework. Every time a creative genius comes into the Hindu world, he creates his own framework. And then he gets number of followers. And then that framework comes to stay. And all these frameworks are centered on ultimate reality. That's the beauty. Whether it is yoga, or whether it is sankhya, or whether it is Vaishnavism, or whether it is Shaivism, is completely centered on God or ultimate reality. And Nainam Chindanti, na enam. Enam means we are referring to that Atma or the self. Chindanti Shastrani. So weapons cannot cut this Atma. It is not a loaf of bread which can be cut by the knife at the breakfast table. It's not a huge loaf of bread which you can cut. It is non-physical, non-chemical, non-material. So weapons cannot cut it. Nainam dahati pavakaha. That is, fire cannot burn it. So they're giving you food for thought, making you think. What is this Atma? So weapons cannot cut it. Fire cannot burn it. Nachainam kledayantyapo. Water cannot wet it. You pour water on it, then the floor becomes wet. No, you pour water on this, it cannot be wetted. Na shoshayati marutaha. Wind does not dry it. This is the Atma. And this is you. So weapons cannot cut it, fire cannot burn it, water does not wet it, wind does not dry it. Now this is food for thought for you to think. Now this is who you are. The elements cannot touch you. And the elements are the lower nature of Ishvara, lower nature of the Supreme, all the elements, the earth element, the water element, the fire element. Yeah. Now the lower nature, none of these elements can contaminate the higher nature. The higher nature is absolutely blemishless and timeless. So nothing can get near it. It's far, far away. And we are that. Yeah, question.
How is this related to the slide where you say Atma revealed and all the little balls were like scattered?
Okay, I'll go back to that. I'll go back. Not this, previous one? Yeah. Now, so long as the thoughts are very, very important for you, and you have a sense of ownership on the thoughts, you have a sense of ownership on the thoughts, then you're clinging to your thoughts, and they're coming so close one after the other that you actually do not see